back to Hot Rod Guy Garage, and it's time to get back on the 65 Mustang. So follow me on through the intro, and I'll be back. And alright guys, it's time to get started back on the 65 project, this old hacked up mess that we got. Now, I'm not going to stick around too long before I flip this camera around, but I need to start measuring for these frame rails in the rear. So let me flip around and show you. So this is the point I'm at. This is where we stopped from the floors, and now we're back here in the back. So in order to get our frame rails marked to put these new rails in, we need to get these tailpipes off this car and these rear release spring shackles and make sure these frame rails are back square. And then we can start marking and put everything back together. So got a bunch of stuff I got to remove, like these zip ties for these air shocks. Once this frame rail is removed, I can cut this piece out right here, patch these inner wheelhouses. I do have a new panel for S to go in, so I'll probably more likely go ahead and cut it out also. And then we can go up in here and actually cut this rail. I was debating on just putting the rear half of the section in, but I'm really thinking about just using the whole piece because, you know, if not, I'm going to have to clean all this stuff up, and it's just less work for me in the end. So, big thing is I got to get all these tailpipe hangers and mess off here and these shackles. So, let's get to that. So I got all the muffler hangers cut loose and the air shock lines and everything that had zip tied up to the frame rails and lines and exhaust and what have you. So at this point, we're going to have to start getting this center pan out, and then I can start marking stuff. Alright, so I went here and I just cut the ends of these tailpipes off. Maybe I can run a straight section to get out this tail panel correctly and get it off this gas tank. Brake line not attached. As you see, there's quite the mess here. That's something that's going to have to be addressed. This panel, I just hacked it off. I had the sawzall out. I cut it below the bend up there. That way I can trim it back as I need. So I need to get these old hangers off here and get these shackles loose. So let me work on that and I'll be back. And just like that, our 1975 leaf spring shackles are off. I've got the rear end just hanging by the rear shocks back there, which will be fine. So at this point, I still got to take them two exhaust hangers off, get that fuel line kind of pulled out of the way, and then we can go in here and start marking for our new frame rail sections. So a lot of hackery to take off to get to this point, and still more to take off. So once I get all that stuff stripped off here, we should be able to start measuring for those frame rail sections. We should be pretty straightforward. So give me this few and I'll be back. And all right, we're at this point where I got them off and I went here and tentatively marked. And I'm going to show you how I determine this position. As you can see, our leaf spring shackle bolt hole center here. I know it don't look really straight in camera because I'm trying just to show you here, but I'll take something like this, mark center, straight down to the center of our other, and same on the other side over here. We got everything kind of centered up. Note, this right here does not make me very happy, but they are good thick panels. Not real happy with the stamping of them, but they do seem to match shape. So I went here and made two marks. One longer, one shorter, one longer, one shorter. I'm cutting on my longer mark first. I'm going to do one side at a time. That way I can check my length. And I will probably use a self-tapper screw to hold it in for now. And then once I get everything measured out how I want it, I'll come here, remove that screw, drill some plug weld holes, then plug weld it and run a bead down this seam right here. These aftermarket rails are actually made to slide inside the factory ones right here, and that's why they got this little flange. So once it's installed, it should be just as strong as factory as long as you weld it in properly. So let's get this old rail cut out on the driver's side, since that's the one I'm going to have to do most of the work on. And we'll test fit this rail. So got that rail cut off. I just went here with Sawzall and hacked it off. Obviously, I got to fix this while I'm in here. This side's bent a little bit right here, so I need to dolly that out, get that out, and then we test fit that rail. Alright guys, I got this driver's side rail mocked up, and as you can see, I cut it a little bit short. But there's a way to fix that. But we'll go into that here in just a moment. So what I done, I measured from a cross member up there to the tip, cross member to the tip on both sides, and I come up with 37.5 inches there. Now the floor here, concrete floor to this flange right here on the top side, come out to 26 3/4. And the factory Ford manual states that the distance from the center here to the center on the other side is supposed to be 43 inches. So that's what I come up with for measurements, and that's where we ended up having a gap up there, which I can cut a little band out of our old frame rail right there as a filler piece right there. That'll work. So I got this mocked up. Let me pull it back out, cut this flange out, grind these down, and weld through primer them and get it mocked back up. And basically I cut it short. That was my own fault. I made 2 marks. I cut on the wrong one. It happens. So should be relatively easy to fix with a little small band out of the old frame rail. It's not going to weaken it any. In fact, it may actually make it stronger. So let me get this pulled apart, get this flange cut out on the wheel well, and then I'll be back. Alright, I come in here and rough trim this wheelhouse out on the inside where I'm going to put a little patch down here at the bottom. I went ahead and welded this frame rail in. Right there. And welded it in on this side over here. And I've still got to section this piece back in right here. Also welded along the inside, even though it's not as pretty as the outside. So now it's time to start cutting those little patches for our top rail right there. So let me get to that. So got my little piece being up right there. This will go in there. I got another one for this other side. Get that where it goes on the inside. I'm welding on the inside and on the outside, top and bottom. So that should restore the integrity back to it. And I went in here and wire brushed everything. I got those little pieces in there, you know, sprayed a little enamel on it just to keep it from rusting because it has been raining. So turned out pretty well. So what we have is another strong frame rail without any rust back here in the lower section or in between, you know, where the plates meet together. So at this point, I need to get the other rail in it. Once that other rail's in, we can start putting in this piece, patching our wheel well piece, and hopefully start tying the, you know, the trunk floor in. And here's Daisy. She's rather needy here lately.
The next day.
And all right, guys, it's Friday, so I still gotta get this other side frame rail in here. So let me get it cut out, and we'll start measuring and get it back in there. And all right, I got that rail cut out, and I got the inside of it cleaned out with some weld-through primer. I went ahead and cleaned this up best I could with flap disc. But the reason why these frame rails were so bad, you see that patch they welded on the side here, and right here under the shackle, you see it's all blistered up over here at the exhaust hanger mounts. And back here, and originally he wanted to try to save these, but there's just not saving these frame rails. And the reason why you get these blisters, you get a double wall in here, and that water and salt corrosion gets up under this, rots out the bottom metal. So the only good thing is we're getting rid of these boogery welded on exhaust hangers and a lot of the ugly with the car. So I think that'll do pretty good. So I'll bring y'all along for the measuring process on this side. But, you know, I still got to fix the bottom of that wheelhouse over there. And I probably gonna have to cut it on up just a little bit, which isn't a huge deal. This exhaust really needed to be cut off. But they weld the hangers way back from the mufflers and right in the bend of, you know, the upward section. So yeah, I guess they're going to live there for now. And all right, this is probably the most difficult thing to do. You need to make sure these rails are in here straight. And as you can see, I just literally just stuck this one in here. These are made to sit inside the factory rail with a pretty snug fit. So the measurements I pulled were off your shop cross member up here, and to the very tip was 37.5 inches. Right now we're sitting about 38.5, so we have about an inch to go in. So I'm gonna butt that up and see where we're at. And we're right there. So let me slide it back just a touch. We're going to see if our measurement's good. Like I said, it's hard for me to show this, but basically I'm just measuring off a flat spot on this cross member to the tip right here. And we're right at the 37.5 inch mark. So that's one important dimension. Our next important dimension is going to be from our floor here to the top of this lip. And that's going to be 26 inches and 3/4. So we're at 26.5. So this needs to come up. You're just going to have to find whatever you can find to kind of shim the back of your frame rail up. And that one's a little too much. So what I'll do from here is I'll just find a combination of things to stack under this rail until we get to that point. We are almost there. We're about 26 5/8, so I need to find something else small to put on top of this. Just Sawzall blade and stick it on top of these two paint sticks. Let's see what we get. and we're 26 3/4 dead on the money. So our next dimension is going to be our width between the rails, and that is supposed to be set to 43 inches. So you're going to have to bear looking at me for a minute. So we're 43 inches between the two rails. So I don't really have no way to sit y'all up here because I got the door shut. So 43 inches is a pretty constant dimension between the rails. And there we are there. So basically, guys, you're going to keep measuring this stuff until your dimensions come out. And I'm going to come in here and cross measure also from point to point to make sure the rails are square in the car. But it's going to be a lot of measuring to put these rails in. It's different if you're just putting one side in and just changing the rail and not the trunk floor. You could go in here and cut this out and literally just put this back up in the same position. But since we're starting with nothing back here, these rails have to be in square and they have to be in the right dimensions. If not, everything we build up from here won't be right. All right, after about 20 minutes of measuring, I've got this exactly where I wanted it. So at this point, we're going to come in here. I'm just going to spot weld it, recheck my measurements, and then I'll be back. All right, I double checked my measurements. We're still all the same. I did have to do a little tweaking on it after spot welding it in a couple of places because when you weld stuff just tend to move. So we're all back in the proper position. Now let's run some beads on it. And all right, at this point, I'm just kind of mocking stuff up just to see how all this metal is going to fit together. Decide how I need to go further forward. So obviously, you drop down in front. It's got to go in first. That's going to be our first panel we put in next. But I wanted to go ahead and kind of fit these sides just to kind of see what kind of relation to angles that we have with this replacement metal versus the factory stuff. So the goal here is to make it look as best as we can. And well, of course, with aftermarket stuff, it's not always stamped quite right. So that's why I just went in there yesterday and cut on that bend, just kind of roughly with the saw. You can see it is crooked and crap. I've done that because this pan actually overlaps quite a bit on the top side. So it gives me plenty of room to trim and get that piece out of the way so I can get in there and weld the frame rails. So over here, we got a pretty decent fit around that wheelhouse. I got it bent out at the bottom a little bit down there. But we're sitting flat on the subframe over here, and we're sitting flat on the subframe over here. So I will probably wait and put that patch piece in after these are in. These are one of the last pieces of the trunk floor to go in. So you're going to start with your front, and then your rear cross member is going to go in back here. It goes at the back of the tank, and then you put your sides in. So I guess let me set this stuff off to the side, and we'll get to fitting this centerpiece. All right, and what I've done, I come in here and centered this up between these frame rails and marked me a center line. And then, as you notice, the trunk floor has a raised hump right here in the center. I come out about 1 inch on each side, same angle, and drill a line straight across. I'm going to notch this out right here, so I move this panel back a little bit, see how my fitment is there. And if everything looks okay, I'm going to mark my cut line, and then we can cut them in here and cut this out. Well, a few hours later, not that it took a few hours to do this, I had something else come up, but got our pan notch to go around this hump. Got it pretty much fitted up where it needs to be, so now's the time where we need to mark this pan to get our cutout line in order to put this in. And doing it this way, we now have a pattern to cut out in order to get a good flush mount right here. So I am going to cut this the side of this side because our bend right here. So let me get this cut out and I'll be back. Got the panel all fitted up here, so it's time to start welding it in. Alright, got our pan all mocked up in there. Well, welded up and hit with flap disc. Doing it this way maintains that little hump in the middle of the floor, little seam sealer, and that'll disappear. So I'm ready to stick my sides back in here, see how they fit. And alright, I test fitted my trunk pieces, meet up with that. So at this point we're ready for that rear cross member, and what you want to make sure is this is square. And by square, you need to have the same amount of length from the center here to the outside edge on both sides. This needs to fit tight against the bottom of the frame rails, and it needs to fit flush against your flanges in here. Once you mock this up, you need to drill your plug weld holes, because this does not weld in fully, it is plug welded. So at the point of mock up, you need to mark where your centers are, so once you take this off, you can line it straight back up. You can drill your plug weld holes and prepare your flanges and stuff to be welded on. So this is where I'm at this point. So let's get this rear cross member in there. And I took a little bit of liberty here. I just went ahead and welded that all the way in. It's not going to hurt it. Adds a little torsional rigidity to it. And, you know, considering this car's structural weaknesses, it's a good preventative measure. So I did put some plug welds in it to hold it down, but I'm welding her fully in. Went in here and just went ahead and fully welded my cross member in there, all the way down through and in. And as you can see, we got good penetration on the outside. And we're fully welded in, inside and out, on both sides. The important thing to do, as long as this thing's in here square, you should be able to take your new trunk floor and it should literally just sit down in here. Should have a good tight fit along all your flanges, and you should almost be flush back here at the very back. So pretty good day of getting everything squared back up back here in the back of the car. So I guess our next video, guys, will be putting these pieces in. I'm not going to finish them today. It's late on a Friday at this point. But get the frame rails in it, the rear cross member, and the front drop down for the gas tank, or we can call it the front of the trunk floor. And we got everything mocked up for our next round of metal work. So I know this video has been a little hectic and everywhere compared to the other ones where I showed 90% of the work that I've done. Unfortunately, it's been very busy around here, and there's been a lot going on the outside. So I didn't get to get as much footage as I wanted to, but you get pretty much the gist of what's going on. And you know, if you like these kind of videos, make sure you like this video, share it with your friends, and most importantly, if you're a new watcher and you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. It does help the channel to grow. So until the next episode on the 65 Mustang hack job, that's going to be it for today. And I'll see you at the next video. Thank you for watching.